Sure. Here is section 1 of your story script, written tightly and with purpose, at approximately 1,000 words, keeping the storytelling crisp, emotionally layered, and without repetition or filler. This version respects the faceless video format by staying internal, immersive, and emotionally driven. She lay beside me every night, the same woman I'd vowed to love forever. Her breathing was soft, steady, familiar. We had a house, a mortgage, 2 kids with cereal preferences and bedtime routines. On paper, I had everything a man was supposed to want. But somewhere along the way, I'd stopped feeling anything. And worse than that, I couldn't remember when the feeling had left. It was just gone, like a light someone turned off slowly, one room at a time. We used to talk until midnight. We used to laugh at nothing. I used to stare at her across the kitchen while she made coffee and think, how did I get this lucky? Now, we exchanged words like currency, logistics, schedules, pick up milk, parent-teacher night. Did you pay the bill? Our love was buried beneath layers of obligation and silence. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I was numb, and I didn't know how to say that without sounding ungrateful or cruel. Some nights I'd lie awake, not because I couldn't sleep, but because I wanted to feel something. Even loneliness would have been a relief. Instead, it was a kind of dull ache I couldn't explain to anyone. My friends wouldn't understand. My parents would tell me to be thankful. And my wife, well, she already knew. She could feel me pulling away, the way you sense winter in the air before the leaves start falling. She tried. In small ways. A weekend getaway, an unexpected kiss, even lingerie once. But I flinched from it all. It wasn't her fault. She was still the woman I married, loyal, beautiful in ways I couldn't always articulate, a good mother. But the weight of everything we'd built had collapsed into routine. We were more partners than lovers, more roommates than soulmates. And I didn't know how to go back. There were nights I thought about leaving. Not out loud, not with bags packed, but in that quiet, dangerous space in your mind where you start bargaining with regret. I'd imagine a different version of myself, younger, unburdened, in some city apartment where no one needed me, where I could sit in silence and be no one to anyone. I told myself it was just a fantasy, a harmless escape. But fantasies have a way of rewriting reality. The kids kept us grounded. Soccer practice, school projects, bedtime stories, they gave me purpose, a role. I was dad and honey, and can you fix this? But when the house went quiet, I was just a man lying beside a woman he once loved desperately, now unsure how to reach her. I stopped noticing the things that used to stop me in my tracks. Her laugh, her eyes when she read in bed, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear. It was all still there, but I was too far gone. I'd become someone I didn't recognize. And when you stop recognizing yourself, it's only a matter of time before you start looking for something or someone who does. I didn't know it yet, but I was already cheating in my mind. Not with anyone specific, but with the idea of being wanted again, seen again, felt again. I wanted intensity, not comfort, not safety. I wanted to be unraveled. And the truth is, I hated myself for wanting it, because I knew what it could cost. But that didn't stop the thoughts. They came quietly, like whispers. Maybe there's more. Maybe this isn't all there is. Maybe love isn't meant to last this long in the same shape. I'd watch romantic scenes in movies and feel a strange resentment. Why didn't I feel that anymore? Did anyone? Or was it all a lie we tell ourselves in our 20s? There was no great event that caused the distance between us. No betrayal. No fight. Just a slow erosion. And maybe that's worse. Because when something shatters, you can point to the crack. But when it dissolves slowly, you're just left wondering when you stopped holding on. I never spoke these thoughts aloud. Not to friends, not even to a therapist. I just carried them. Day after day. Night after night. And every time I looked at her, I felt 2 things at once. Guilt for not feeling more, and grief for what we used to be. That's how it started. Not with lust. Not with desire. But with absence. With the echo of a life that looked perfect from the outside, but felt hollow on the inside. I told myself I'd never be the kind of man who strayed. I wore that like armor. But armor doesn't help when the wounds come from the inside. And all it took was one moment, one connection for everything I thought I believed in to start slipping through my fingers. Would you like me to continue with section 2? Of course. Here's section 2 of your story, written with clarity, emotion, and without repetition, focused, introspective, and continuing naturally from where section 1 left off. The word count is approximately 1,000 words, structured to maintain narrative momentum and character development while staying grounded in the theme of infidelity. She wasn't supposed to mean anything. At first, she didn't. She was just part of the background, someone I passed by without a second thought. Maybe I saw her twice before we ever spoke, maybe more. I don't remember. But the first time we really talked, it felt like a window cracked open in a room I hadn't realized was suffocating. It was after a long meeting, the kind that drains you even if you say nothing. I stayed late, finishing emails, procrastinating going home. She was there too, working late, or pretending to. We exchanged a few words about the presentation, then about coffee, then about nothing important at all. But there was something in the way she looked at me. Direct. Curious. Unfiltered. I wasn't used to being seen like that anymore. The next day, she passed by my office and smiled. Not polite. Not forced. Just familiar, as if she already knew something about me I hadn't said out loud. We started having coffee together during breaks. She made me laugh. Not forced laughter to fill the silence, but real laughter that shook something loose inside me. I didn't tell my wife. I didn't think it mattered. It wasn't anything. That's what I kept telling myself. That's what made it safe. But it mattered. Because I started thinking about her when I wasn't with her. I started looking forward to work again. Not for the job, for the moments between the tasks. A glance across the room. A text that made me smile before I even read it. She never flirted directly. She didn't need to. It was the ease between us, the unspoken invitation in every shared joke, every lingering pause. I told myself I was just enjoying attention, that it was harmless. But that's how it always begins. With justifications. With lies that feel like protection. With stories we tell ourselves to make desire feel like something noble. She didn't ask about my marriage. She never pushed. That made it worse, somehow. It allowed me to keep pretending it wasn't crossing a line. But I knew. The first time I deleted a message before walking in the door, I knew. The first time I typed her name and hesitated, staring at the screen, I knew. This wasn't friendship. It wasn't emotional support. It was the beginning of something dangerous. She made it easy to talk. She asked about my childhood, about music, about regrets. She laughed at my sarcasm, called me out when I deflected too much. She wasn't trying to seduce me. That would have made it easier to resist. Of course. Here is section 3 of your story, written with sharp focus, emotional intensity, and clean pacing. It avoids repetition, sticks to the point, and continues the arc of emotional and now physical infidelity. Word count is approximately 1,000 words. I told myself it would just be dinner. Nothing more. A conversation outside the office. A moment to exhale. But that night changed everything. We didn't talk about our situations. No questions about my wife. No mentions of her past. We just talked about music, old memories, stupid fears, things I hadn't said out loud in years. I felt lighter. Like myself. Not the version that carried guilt and responsibility, but the one I used to be before everything got so heavy. When we left the restaurant, it wasn't planned. It wasn't orchestrated. She looked at me, and I looked back, and there was a silence I didn't want to end. I didn't think. I just followed her. In the elevator, we didn't speak. My hands were shaking. My mind screamed at me to leave. But my body had already decided. The second the door closed behind us, there was no going back. It wasn't rough. It wasn't even frantic. It was slow. Like we both needed it to mean something. I didn't feel lust. I felt hunger. For warmth. For touch. For a version of myself I thought I'd lost. I kissed her like I needed her to prove I was still alive. Afterward, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel regret either. Just stillness. Like my life had split in two, and I hadn't decided which half to return to. She reached for my hand, and I didn't pull away. We didn't talk much. There was no need. We already knew what we had done. And we both knew it wouldn't be the last time. Back home, everything felt dim. The walls, the lights, my wife's voice, even the kids' laughter. It all sounded like it was coming from the other side of a glass wall. I played along, said the right things, went through the motions. But inside, I had already stepped out of my life. The next day, I told myself I'd cut it off, that I'd pretend it never happened. But then she texted me something small, a joke about something we saw at dinner, and I smiled without meaning to. That smile was the answer. I was already too far in. It became a rhythm, a parallel life. Days filled with emails, errands, school pickups. Nights with her. Not always physical, but always intimate. She knew how to ask the right questions. She knew when to speak, when to stay quiet. She knew how to make me feel necessary. I lied with ease. I thought it would be harder. But once you cross a certain line, lying becomes second nature. Not dramatic lies. Just omissions, adjustments, rewritten timelines. I became good at covering tracks. Too good. I justified it all in layers. It's just temporary. No one's getting hurt. I'm still a good father. But at night, in the silence, I knew better. I was two people. One in the kitchen helping with homework, the other in a dim apartment touching skin that didn't belong to me. Every time I left her place, I told myself it was the last time. That I had gotten what I needed. That it had served its purpose. And then I'd return. Because it wasn't just about sex. It was the way she made me feel seen, wanted, chosen. Things I hadn't admitted I missed. She never asked for more. That made her dangerous. She let me come and go. Never pushed. Never pressured. But I could feel her slipping under my skin, becoming part of my bloodstream. I thought I had control. I didn't. One night, my wife found a receipt. A hotel, nothing extravagant. She didn't say anything at first. Just left it on the kitchen counter. I stared at it for a full minute before I could even blink. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just looked at me and asked one question. Do I even want to know? I lied. Instantly. Reflexively. I gave her a story about a client dinner, running late, no rooms left in town. She didn't push. She just nodded, walked away, and closed the bedroom door. That silence was worse than any confrontation. Something broke that night. Not in her. In me. I realized I didn't deserve her patience. I didn't deserve her trust. But I still couldn't stop. The affair didn't get more reckless. If anything, it became more calculated. We were careful. We knew the risks. But the danger only made it feel more real. Like we were living outside the rules, and the rules were the reason we were dying inside to begin with. I started noticing changes in myself. I was more present at home, strangely. Overcompensating. Trying to balance the equation. But it was a performance. I was playing two roles in two stories that could never meet. She asked me once, quietly, gently, if I ever thought about leaving. I didn't answer. Not because I hadn't thought about it, but because I had. Too often. And not just for her. For me. For the version of me I remembered before everything settled into duty. But I couldn't imagine breaking my family. Destroying the lives that depended on my constancy. I didn't want to hurt them. I just wanted to feel something again. That's the lie I lived in. That I could have both. That I could keep my family intact while stealing time in the shadows with someone who reminded me of who I used to be. I didn't see it as betrayal. I saw it as survival. But I was wrong. The guilt didn't stop me. The risk didn't stop me. The only thing I feared was what would happen if it all came crashing down, if I had to look at my children and explain why their father broke the one thing he was supposed to protect. And still, every time I saw her, I felt weightless. That was the real betrayal. Ready for Section 4 when you are. It'll bring everything to a close with full emotional and narrative consequences. Of course. Below is Section 4, approximately 1,000 words, closing the story with clarity, emotional weight, and without redundancy. It delivers the necessary consequences, moral fallout, and resolution expected from a well-structured infidelity narrative, clean, sharp, and direct. It didn't end with a discovery. It ended with a decision. I woke up one morning and realized I couldn't do it anymore. Not because I'd been caught. Not because I suddenly felt noble. But because I saw what I had become. Someone living in pieces, lying with ease, loving in fractions. I couldn't recognize my own reflection. I was tired of hiding. Tired of rehearsing stories. Tired of walking into rooms wondering what version of myself I had to be that day. She knew before I said it. I didn't have to explain. I just told her I couldn't keep going. She nodded once, looked at me for a long time, and said, "I never asked you to." There was no begging, no pleading. That's what made it harder. She let me walk away without punishment because she'd never expected more than I offered. I had made promises without speaking them and broken them the same way. At home, I was different. Quiet. Present, but disconnected. My wife saw it. She felt it every time I sat next to her and said nothing. We went through the motions: dinner, bedtime, dishes, lights out. But something